Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Today is May 18th, 2023. This is our 148th episode. My name is Sunsara Taylor, and I am coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Andy Z, our main host, is not in studio this week. As you will see in today's episode, he's in New York City, and you'll be hearing from him through clips that we will share with you from the riveting program he held earlier this week up at Revolution Books. Getting into this new broadsheet, we are the Revcoms, revolutionary communists. We are working for a real revolution and a whole new emancipating way to live. This is also the message, the mission, and the theme of this show. We are a show about a real revolution. This is where you learn about why revolution is necessary, what revolution entails, and what kind of liberating society and world this revolution can make possible. We base ourselves on the revolutionary leadership and the new communism that has been forged by Bob Avakian. B.A. Bob Avakian is the architect of the new communism, and he is the author of this Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America. This Constitution, this document, and the society and the economy and the culture and the ongoing transformation that it envisions is radically different than the U.S. Constitution, which was written by slave owners and exploiters, and which can only ever reinforce relations of exploitation and oppression. In today's episode, you will learn more about this and more about Bob Avakian as well. So with that, let me run down what we have in store for you today. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to hear from Andy Z, from his program at Revolution Books up in Harlem, New York City, where he is speaking about this broadsheet, We Are the Revcoms, what's in it, and the role it needs to and can play in putting revolution on the map this year and in bringing forward the forces we need to make this revolution real in short order. Following that, I'll be joined by Rafael Kadaris on the theme Woke Lunacy versus Real Revolution. This is the title of a speaking tour that I've been on with him and a campaign that we are waging, including next Wednesday. I will be giving this talk at a major event at UCLA. And if you are anywhere in the Los Angeles area, you need to get to this event next Wednesday night. And across the country, next week we will broadcast this speech and some of the Q&A in a special episode of the RNL Show on a special time. It'll be on Friday rather than Thursday. It'll be Friday, May 26th. We will broadcast this, and we want to urge you now to spread the word about this special episode and to host screenings wherever you are. Bring people together to get into it. After this segment on woke lunacy versus real revolution, we will share an excerpt from the interviews, the Bob Avakian interviews that we did here on this show last fall. We're going to share a segment of this that picks up on what we got into last week and goes further on the questions of democracy and dictatorship. These are two words and two crucial concepts that are so deeply misunderstood in society and which BA breaks down like no one else. And finally, we will have a report back from the Revcoms trip down to the U.S.-Mexico border last week on the day that Title 42 expired, featuring Atlas Winfrey, who's a member of our team here, and we'll conclude with a special contribution from one of our viewers, C. Clark Kissinger, which you will not want to miss. So with that, let's dive into our first segment with Andy Z on We Are the Revcoms, this statement. And let me note, as you watch him present, that in the audience in Revolution Books, people were following along as he got into this in the broadsheet in person, reading along with it. And there's a tremendous amount to learn from how Andy walks us through this. So let's watch.
So who is this proclamation addressed to? Well, it says here on the front page, to everyone who can't stand the world the way it is, who is sick and tired of so many people being treated as less than human. And these are but the opening two lines, as this preamble goes on to include all who we agonize over the state of things today, everyone who hungers for a world without oppression, exploitation, poverty, and the destruction of the environment, everyone who has the heart to fight for something that is really worth fighting for. good. That's over here. And we call on all of you and everyone who feels this way to become a part of this revolution. And those of you who are here tonight at Revolution Books, or who are watching online at the RNL Show, and those of you who support or sympathize with or who are themselves Revcoms, are you taking this out and putting this before everyone who's described in that opening paragraph? And if so, we want to learn from your experience. And if not, why not? Why not? We can discuss that tonight. Because there is no revolution without millions of people. And it's got to start with hundreds and thousands, and they have to know about it. And that depends on all of you. For this is a stark fact. A revolution, when the conditions present themselves and the initial thousands have been organized, then requires millions to overthrow the system that we live under. And if you're keeping this message from the masses of people who do care but don't know about this revolution and the leadership we have, then the seed of this proclamation will not bear the fruit of a radically new emancipating society, a new radically emancipating way that people could live here and around the world. And that would be a great crime. So let's take a look at the statement as it's put on the broadsheet, which again needs to be distributed far and wide and find its ways up onto the walls in the streets and in the stores and community centers, in the schools, on the bulletin boards. Everywhere there are people who are described in this opening paragraph. I want to briefly point to three things that are in this first column here. Number one, we base ourselves on an understanding of what is the problem. And in doing that, we base ourselves on the scientific method and approach that Bob Avakian has brought forward that enables us to understand what is the problem we face. Number two, that problem and this method reveals that it is the system of capitalism imperialism that is the source of all the outrages and madness that people are subjected to here and all over the world. And we draw special attention to the existential threat to the survival of humanity and much of life on Earth in the present danger of world war between the U.S. and Russia and China, as well as to the existential threat to the environment that is brought on by this system of capitalism imperialism. And the third thing that's gone into in this opening section of the declaration, the proclamation, We Are the Revcoms, is three, that the very extremeness of the time we live in, and particularly the sharp divide among the rulers of this system in this country, opens up the unusual, the rare, and the unique time when a real revolution to overthrow this system could be possible. I'm going to read now what it says about this possibility. This is a rare time when the capitalist imperialists who rule over us in this country are deeply divided in a way they have not been since the Civil War in the 1860s. And the country is being ripped apart, with one section of the ruling class moving toward an outright fascist form of rule, with the other fighting for the horrific way things have been. They cannot resolve these differences. They cannot resolve these deep divisions and hold the country together on the basis of the normal way this system has operated. And in any case, that normal way is full of oppression, destruction, and the real danger of wiping out humanity. And for these reasons, this revolution that we are working for is urgently necessary and more possible. And this column concludes with this, quote, Bob Avakian has sharply expressed this profound reality. We can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to continue to dominate the world and determine the destiny of humanity. And it is a scientific fact that humanity does not have to live this way. A whole different way to organize society, a whole better world is possible. And this leads to the heart of the statement. Right here. Shaping up before us now are two fundamentally opposed futures. Fundamentally opposed. Something terrible or something truly emancipating. And because of this, we are determined, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, to do these three things. And again, I'm going to read from this statement, and this should ground our discussion. The first is to seize on this rare time to develop the basis to actually make revolution, to finally defeat the violent enforcers of this monstrous system, and this means organizing for this revolution now among the most bitterly oppressed and from all parts of society, first in the thousands and then in the millions, and doing so consistently with a countrywide perspective, politically impacting all of society and changing the terms of how masses of people see things and how every institution in society has to respond. Developing the conscious, organized, revolutionary forces to the point where, with millions won to revolution, it will then be possible to have a real chance to win. Now, there's a lot packed into that first point, but it's a very decisive point if we are going to be getting that something truly emancipating and not the future that's going to be truly terrible. The second point, it says in the center of the column of this broadsheet, to abolish this system with all of its oppressive institutions and its governing U.S. Constitution, a document written by and fundamentally serving the interests of slave owners and capitalist exploiters, from the founding of this country down to today, a document that restricts the notion of freedom to what is possible within the killing confines of the system of brutal exploitation and murderous oppression. Again, that's a deep point, that the freedom of this Constitution that we live under is restricted to the killing confines of this system of brutal exploitation and murderous oppression. Number 3, to establish a far better system based on the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America written by Bob Avakian, which provides a sweeping vision, a firm foundation, and a concrete blueprint for bringing into being a society and ultimately a world free from all forms of slavery, all exploitation and oppression based on class, race, sex, and gender, all relations in which one part of humanity is subordinated to and dominated by others. This socialist system, in uprooting the capitalist imperialist system in this country and supporting revolutionary struggle in the world as a whole, will create a realistic possibility and will move systematically and effectively to address the already acute and fast accelerating environmental crisis, while also moving to abolish nuclear weapons with the ultimate goal finally of abolishing wars among human beings with the abolition of the capitalist imperialist system and all systems and relations of exploitation and oppression which are the basis for wars. So how do we go about doing this? Well, that's what's in the third column, where it outlines that we have the method, the strategy, and the plan to make this real. So to make what I have so far outlined from this statement a real revolution is a really big deal. I'm not going to kid you, and we're not kidding you. It's a hard road. It's a road that's going to require a lot of sacrifice. But there is no other way out of the madness of the society today and the terrible future that is unfolding before our eyes almost every week. So don't hide your eyes. Don't cover your ears. And in 1,000 ways, don't avoid the reality, both the horror and the potential for a real revolution that requires sacrifice, but yes, for a liberating future. Don't turn away, stick your head in the sand, or make excuses to go along with the way things have been, standing apart from or even bad-mouthing the revolution. So let's not throw away this rare opportunity to be a part of bringing something much better into being. All the more so because there is the leadership of Bob Avakian and the Revcoms, with the tools in the science of revolution, the science of the new communism that you can take up, along with the strategy, the vision, and that concrete blueprint in the Constitution for the new socialist republic, for a radically new society that will get us on the road to overcoming all forms of oppression and exploitation all over the world. That's a long, arduous struggle, but without overthrowing the state power that we live under and establishing a new society that gives backing to the masses of people to throw off these forms of exploitation and oppression that have been legacy for thousands of years, we don't have a chance. But with this, we have a chance. So look, we can get into as much of this tonight as you want, or as we have time for, and as much as I can hold up for, but let this be the beginning of an urgent, liberating process to fight for the future of humanity. A crucial start of this process is spreading this manifesto, this proclamation, this statement, this broadsheet, whatever you want to call it. We are the Revcoms, far and wide, digging into it as we will begin to do tonight. This year, we're putting revolution on the map, and we are calling on all of you to be a part of doing that.
Next Wednesday, May 24th, I'll be giving a major speech at UCLA titled Woke Lunacy versus Real Revolution. And then, as I am now, I'll be joined by Rafael Kadaris. We've been on a speaking tour and campaigned together to take on this woke lunacy. And we're doing this in a time that is very fraught, where the whole future is being fought over. Right now, look around. We're living through abortion bans, anti-trans laws, savage brutality at the U.S.-Mexico border, continuing racist murder by police, and the looming threat of fascism returning to power in 2024, all while this system is hurtling humanity towards extinction with its climate change and the threat of U.S. war with Russia or China, a war which could become nuclear. All this is headed towards something catastrophic, but it also holds the potential for something truly emancipating. Society is splitting apart. There are deep divides among the rulers and all the way down throughout society. And in a moment like this, we could make a real revolution. We could bring forward the people. We could bring forward a revolution, and if we got serious. So this is why we're taking on this woke lunacy, because it poses as an answer to this system's injustice. Woke lunacy, cancel culture, act like they are an answer to the white supremacy, to the gender oppression. In reality, this is a fraud. This woke lunacy is doing tremendous harm. And in my speech, I will dissect this. I will rip the veil off of wokeism. I will show its theoretical underpinnings, and I will bring to bear firsthand experience in the real world, taking this on as a leader in the fight around abortion rights and in the fight for revolution. So wherever you are, if you're in the LA area, you need to get to UCLA next Wednesday night. Wherever you are in the country, tune into a special broadcast of this show, the RNL Show, next Friday night, to see this speech and to spread it to others. We need to launch this campaign in society now urgently.
This is an incredible speech that Sunsara gives. She just demolishes this woke identity politics philosophically, politically, morally. You really have to be there to see it and to be part of the question and answer, and the discussion afterwards. So if you are anywhere near Los Angeles, Southern California, you got to get there to UCLA. May 24th, Bolter Hall, 6:30 p.m. It's room 3400. And wherever you are in the country, tune in to this special episode of the RNL Show next Friday, May 26th, and host a screening of this. Be part of lifting people's sights to revolution and taking on this woke lunacy.
So, Rafael, you've been out on the campus, actually many campuses, building for this tour, talking to students. And I think it's going to be important for people viewing to learn some of what you've been learning as you've taken this out. And I know if you look at the campuses now, there's a lot of reasons to be very discouraged and demoralized by the fact that the students are not standing up the way they need to the horrors happening in the world. But you are encountering a lot of agonizing and a lot of ways that this woke lunacy is actually just sitting on people's better aspirations. Could you talk about that?
Well, I think one of the reasons that these campuses are so silent right now and paralyzed in the face of, everything you talked about in terms of the situation in the world is exactly because of this framework of woke identity politics, which dominates, and it especially among people who really do care. And there are, students on every college campus that we've been to who are, who do want to do something against racism, against the oppression of women and LGBT people, who do care about people around the world who are suffering unnecessarily, and climate change and all this, but who are really suffocated by this idea. You come to college wanting to learn about the world, wanting to make the world a better place, and then you find out you're supposed to stay in your lane. You're not supposed to talk about things that you haven't directly experienced. White people are not supposed to talk about racism. Men aren't supposed to talk about what women go through, all this kind of stuff. It's, this is extremely paralyzing and demoralizing and suffocating to a whole generation of students. So this is why it's so important that, this speaking tour is coming to these campuses and piercing this whole atmosphere and lifting people's sights to revolution in a whole different way that we could be living and that we could be relating to each other now.
You told me a number of stories, but maybe you could share one of them about some of the professors you've talked to and how intimidated they are by what their students are being whipped up into with this wokeism.
Yeah, I talked to a professor in African American studies who said that she's, this is a good-hearted person who's a very progressive, even radical person, but she's afraid of even using pronouns right now because there's so much obsession with pronouns that she's, afraid that if she accidentally misgenders someone, she might get canceled by her students. She also said she's afraid of talking to her students about Beyonce because she doesn't want to be, say the wrong thing and be targeted by them for that. This is the kind of atmosphere that's, silencing and intimidating good-hearted people.
And it's suffocating critical thought, which is one of the really, really destructive dimensions of this wokeism. It's conditioning people precisely like you said, to think about self, to obsess over self, over identity, over pronouns, to blot out the rest of the world, to only proceed from your direct experience, and to cling to and seek safe spaces from ideas that challenge you. There's a demand for trigger warnings, for canceling professors who challenge your thinking. We've been taking out, as part of this, a quote from Bob Avakian's speech, "Something terrible or something truly emancipating." And in this speech, Bob Avakian just tears apart this wokeism in such a visceral and scientific way. It's actually providing guidance and leadership that we are taking. It's part of why we're doing this tour. So I urge people to go and read the whole section and the whole speech. But we've been taking this segment out where he talks about this trigger warnings and safe spaces and what the atmosphere on college campuses needs to be.
Here I have to say, enough of woke folk who act as if it is actually oppressed people, or as they like to say, the marginalized, who are fragile beings constantly in need of the protection of safe spaces, lest they fall apart at the mere appearance of a triggering phenomenon. And since when are universities and other institutions supposed to be places where you are safe, not just from physical violence of one kind or another, and from overtly threatening or clearly degrading verbal assaults, but from ideas, statements, etc., that simply make you uncomfortable? How are you going to change the world if you are in danger of falling apart at things like that? Again, from Hope for Humanity. In any real struggle to deal with any real oppression up against powerful enforcers of that oppression, you're going to have to face the prospect of real sacrifice, including the prospect of being physically attacked. And if you think that you can carve out little safe enclaves, and that is going to somehow lead to any kind of significant change in society, you are full of illusions and delusions.
This is so true, and it reminds me of an experience I had a few years ago on the UC Berkeley campus where I was holding up a sign of stolen lives of people who, were killed by the police, mostly Black and Latino, and calling on people to be part of a protest to stand up against this and fight to put an end to this and the student came up to me and said, "You're triggering me," and tried to get me to put down the sign and get off of campus, which I didn't do. But this kind of mentality of, oh, you're triggering me because you're showing me the reality of what the police are doing. Never mind the very real triggers being pulled on real human beings and the people who are actually losing their lives, who don't have any goddamn safe space from these police that are shooting them for no good reason or no reason at all. And it also makes me reflect on like back in the day in the 1960s, because Bob Avakian is talking about, since when are oppressed people supposed to be fragile beings? It makes me think about the Black Panther Party, who put it all on the line, who were murdered, in the fight for revolution and went to prison, and made tremendous sacrifices for a better world, or the experience of the freedom riders who were Black and white, mostly college students who went down south, knowing that they were going to be brutalized by the KKK and these white supremacists, and did it anyway because they were fighting for a better world, and we need a lot more of that experience now, because right now these white supremacists, the system will love everyone just staying in their lane and hiding in their safe space while it continues to grind up people's lives. And these white supremacist fascists, are laughing about this, and, they see it as easy prey, these soft crybabies on these college campuses, easy to just steamroll over them.
Yeah, I think, when you speak about the Black Panther Party or the people who went on the freedom rides and all the sacrifice and all of what they stood up to, which was real. When you listen to people talk about it who lived through that, almost to a one, they will say these were the greatest days of their lives, the most meaningful thing they did in their lives, because what they did mattered and it made a difference. It made a difference. And today, in this time when revolution is actually possible, and we have the leadership and we have the strategy, and we are bringing this to students, there is a way not only to stand up to these fascists in this system, but to actually win a whole different world for the nearly 8 billion people on this planet, to really imagine what it would be like to be part of freeing all of humanity. This is what we're bringing people. This is what we're challenging them to lift their sights to and get into, and that they are capable of. But this wokeism is an obstruction, and it's a destructive force in the way of that. So this is what we're taking on. The last thing I was hoping you could bring alive from your experience gets to the destructiveness of this wokeism. And it's not just, look, there are all kinds of non-solutions that we need to debate. But this wokeism is not debating. The woke hustlers, the identity politics hustlers, they're not debating. They are shutting down critical thought. They are shutting down debate. And they're intellectual bullies, but they're also thuggish right on the ground. And I thought you could tell some experience. You've been doing this very creative skit that you and some others came up with, and it solicited some very positive responses from students. But I think you should tell about it and some of the real thuggish behavior that's emerged against you in relation to it.
Yeah, so basically the skit is I go into a busy cafeteria or cafe and make an announcement. Everyone come hear Sunsara Taylor speaking on woke lunacy versus real revolution. And someone who's acting as a woke identity politics hustler, starts heckling me and says, "Who are you as a white man to be talking about revolution?"
Who are you to talk about revolution as a white man?
I'm a human being who gives a fuck. And I'm someone who's actually studied how the system actually works and why it can't be reformed and why we need revolution to put an end to it.
That's your reality. My reality is totally different.
No, that's objective reality, and you should look into it.
There's no such thing as objective reality.
And it goes on from there. But we've had a lot of positive responses. A lot of people turn their heads, what? Because this is exactly the kind of discourse like people hear every day on these college campuses. But we've also gotten people who don't seem to realize it's a skit and start siding with the heckler and, yelling at me, get out of here, white man, like you don't have a, fuck you, just yelling profanities and stuff at me and even getting in my face, trying to push me out. It's like you said, it's trying to intimidate. It's trying to suppress discussion rather than opening it up. But all these people were challenging them. Okay, come here, Sunsara Taylor. Come hear this speech.
Well, a lot of people have a sense that this lunacy, this wokeness is unhinged. It's out of control. It is an out of control virus. And a lot of people grumble about it and speak privately about it against it. but we are daring to stand up to it and to radically change it. This is the thuggery that we are going up against, the intellectual framework and straitjacket and the physical intimidation, and you need to be there. In the House on May 24th at UCLA, you need to experience this speech. You need to be there for the Q&A, which could get quite controversial. I'm sure it will. And around the country, you need to be part of amplifying this, strengthening this campaign, piercing this woke obstruction and lifting people's sights and putting this revolution on the map. So next Friday, the special screenings of the RNL Show, which will feature this speech, tune in wherever you are, Friday, the 26th of May. And if you're in New York City, if you're in Berkeley, go to the Revolution Books screenings and watch it together in Chicago at the Revolution Center, or host a screening wherever you are. Before we have Rafael share a few final closing words calling on you to participate in another way in strengthening this campaign by donating and raising funds, we want to share an excerpt, a very moving excerpt, from the interviews that we did with Bob Avakian last fall, where he speaks about the harm and destructiveness of this cancel culture, the lowered sights of it, and what we have the power to do in opposition to this through a real revolution.
I'll just tell one more story about this. I read in a report that someone said to us about the cancel culture that goes along with all this woke stuff. And I think, look, here's the important thing. The cancel culture is basically based on the notion that people can't change. So you go through someone's life, and if you can find one thing that they did badly, one thing they did wrong, even something really wrong, then that's it for them. They have to be canceled. So you go back, even to somebody's childhood, and sometimes to find something they did. Instead of looking at the whole arc of people's life and what's the main aspect of what their life has been about and what direction are they moving in? Are they moving in look, I look around and I see people who've done bad things. Well, all of us have done bad things, we want to be honest, but people who become committed, revolutionaries. Veterans of the U.S. military in Vietnam who did horrific things but became revolutionaries. Now, here's the thing. If your outlook is that people can't change, then obviously nothing meaningful can change. Society can't change. The world can't change. If people can't change, if people don't change and can't change, then you can't make any real change. No fundamental change. So then all you can do is scuffle and scramble to see if you can get a better position within what is. But that's the logic of cancel culture. And I remember, this is the last thing I'll say on this one guy said, and I read this in a report, as a gay black man, the only power I have is canceling people. Now think about how wrong that is. First of all, think about how this woke shit lowers people's sights. That the most you can think of, the only power you can think you have, is to bring down other people. Now, that's obviously wrong in terms of what you're aiming for. And the morality of it and the political content of it is wrong. But it's also wrong in terms of that is not the only power you have. As an individual, you don't have much power, but as part of a growing revolutionary movement, then your power is magnified and it's no longer your power. It's the power of the collective force of people, not automatons, real, living, breathing people who are striving together and struggling with each other over how to actually eliminate everything that makes you say, in the first place, the only power I have as a gay black man is to cancel other people. Let's cancel the whole system, and then let's emancipate people to have humanity on a whole other level. And that's the real power you have as part of that.
So you've heard a lot about the harm of woke identity politics, and you've heard about how Sunsara Taylor is going directly at this and bringing real revolution to the college campuses. Now, I want to ask you to donate to this effort. We've already spent thousands as part of the speaking tour on room rentals and promotional materials, and we're aiming to raise $10,000 in the next couple weeks. Go to revcom.us and print out this fundraising letter from Sunsara. Get it to professors and artists. Take it to art shows and theaters. Everywhere people are thinking about the world. Everywhere people care about injustice and oppression. Everywhere people are straining and groaning under the weight of this wokeness and feeling intimidated by it. They need to know about Sunsara Taylor's speaking tour, and they need to be asked and struggled with to donate to it. Like actually walk right up to people you don't know, knock on the professor's doors, and tell them about this, and ask them to donate. Give them the opportunity to do something that would really matter with their money. Raising money for the speaking tour is a major way to spread this revolution and bring many more people into it. If you've never done something like this, now's the time to get out of your comfort zone because the stakes are so high right now. And remember, there are literally millions of people who would love to see this woke lunacy taken on. One person who attended the event in Berkeley said, Sunsara turned wokeness on its head and made it feel comical. She was inspiring. Instead of crawling in the dirt, canceling, and obsessing over identity, she lifted our sights to a real revolution that sets all of humanity free. Afterwards, a throng of young people formed around Sunsara to keep talking and just touch her fearlessness. This needs to be amplified and scaled up nationwide. And you can be part of doing this. Think about the impact that this tour is already having and the much bigger impact we're aiming to have at UCLA and beyond in breaking young people out of the intellectual straitjacket of this woke lunacy, and donate generously. When you contribute to this effort, you're contributing to changing the whole atmosphere in society. Lastly, mark your calendars for a special fundraising live stream Sunday, June 4th, 2 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, as part of raising $100,000 for the revolution as a whole by the summer solstice.
A major theme in this statement, We Are the Revcoms, and this broadsheet, is that the system we live under, capitalism, imperialism, cannot be reformed, and that the U.S. Constitution is an exploiter's vision of freedom that is not and cannot be a tool or a framework to bringing about the kind of changes that humanity needs. And this week on Revcom.us, actually last week, we published a piece from Bob Avakian that he updated with some notes on how the U.S. Constitution is an exploiter's vision of freedom. And we urge you to read that, study it, wrangle over it, share it with others, and read the U.S. Constitution in that light and compare it with this Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America that Bob Avakian authored and that lays out the framework and a concrete blueprint for a whole radically new society, a new economy, a new culture, new laws, new education system, new ways that people are working together to change the world, to bring about the emancipation of all of humanity. This is a radical document. Contrast the two. And today we want to share a segment from the interviews that we did with Bob Avakian last fall, where he brings you more of the scientific underpinnings for why this system and its so-called democracy and freedom are really rooted in a system of exploitation, what democracy really means, and what is a dictatorship. We played the beginning part of this answer from the interview last week. And we're going to back up and have some of what we play overlap with last week's answer, but we're going to play it through to the end. Before we do that, I just want to say a word about these interviews. These interviews with Bob Avakian are a treasure trove. You're getting a taste of that earlier today in our episode about the woke lunacy. You're going to get a further taste of that right now. But after this episode, if you haven't watched all 3 interviews, or even if you have, go back and watch them and really live in and experience the journey that Bob Avakian takes you on. When you do this, when you watch these interviews, you get a different understanding of how to understand the madness that we're living through in this world. How unnecessary all the anguish and oppression that so many people have to put up with today. How unnecessary it is, and how we could bring about a world that is so much more radically liberating than most people can even imagine right now. And you get more than that. You get to meet this extraordinary revolutionary leader up close and personal. Bob Avakian, like you have never seen him before. You learn what shaped him in his upbringing, his experiences in the 1960s, working with the Black Panther Party leaders, and so much more. You get his sense of humor, you get his sense of humanity, and you get his hardcore determination and scientific approach to making this revolution real and seizing this rare time we have to make a real revolution. So watch it and spread these interviews, because if they got out in society, if tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of millions of people watch these interviews, they could be a game changer in the whole direction of society and the world. So with that in mind, we're going to go now to Bob Avakian on dictatorship and democracy.
Now to talk about democracy, on the other hand, under this system, Mao said, Mao said, sounds religious. But anyway, Mao did say, and he was right. So that's the important point, that democracy is part of the superstructure. What do we mean by that? Well, like you have a house that has a foundation, the walls and the roof are the superstructure over the foundation. So in society, the foundation is the economic system, and the political institutions and processes and the culture are the superstructure that arises on that and then in turn reflects and reinforces it. So the point is that in the superstructure, democracy is part of that superstructure. And what does that mean? It means that the superstructure, again, arises on the basis of and in turn reinforces the underlying foundation, the economic system that is the foundation for the society. So when you have a capitalist economic foundation based on exploitation, the superstructure, in order for the society to function, has to be an expression of and reinforce that underlying system of exploitation. And if it doesn't, then the society will just come completely unraveled and be torn apart. And I've used the example many times, and I think it's a good example, of the right to eat. The laws as well as the politics are part of the superstructure. So let's say you had a law in capitalist society that said people have a right to eat, and let's expand it more broadly. People have a right to all the basic necessities of life. I mean, after all, what can be more fundamental? That you have to, that you can have the basic necessities of life, or that you're denied the basic necessities of life. So let's say you pass a law. Some well-meaning social democrats got in, and they said, let's pass a law that says that everyone has the right to eat. All right, well now that's a right enshrined in law. So hungry masses who don't have the money to pay for, forget about Whole Foods, what is it? Ralph's Market, from the Big Lebowski, right? Anyway, let's say they go into Ralph's Market, and they go up to the cashier and they got all this food, and the cashier says that'll be $173.28. And they say, I'm sorry, I only have $16. Well, then you're going to have to put some food back. No, I don't, because I have a right to eat. It's written into the law. Now imagine what would happen then. The whole economy would very quickly fall apart, because it takes money to produce all this stuff that's sold in the store. The store has to have a building. It has to have maintenance. It has to pay employees, plus all the other people that had to be paid, and all the structures that had to exist, and the machinery that had to be used to produce the food. And first of all, the farm workers to get it out of the ground and so on, and to plant it. All that is expenses that went into producing all this food. So if people just walk in and say, I have a right enshrined in law, you can't stop me, I'm going to take anything I need out of this store as long as I say it's for my basic needs, you could see how the whole society would come completely unraveled. So, this is one illustration of how the superstructure of politics and laws and so on has to reflect the underlying system. The democracy we have under this system is the democracy of the capitalist system of exploitation. It means that you can exercise rights as long as they stay within the framework of the capitalist system of exploitation. I was just reading that Adam Hochschild, who did the book, on the Congo and Leopold's Ghost, about the horrific plunder and exploitation and murder of masses of people in the Congo under the rule of Belgian imperialism. You might think, little Belgium, they can't do much. They murdered like nearly half the population of the Congo in the 19th and early part of the 20th century. And anyway, Adam Hochschild, who wrote that book, has written a book about World War I. And he brings out how in World War I, once the great Democrat Woodrow Wilson, who was also a vicious racist, by the way, who supported that film, what the hell is that film?
Birth of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation, about glorifying the Ku Klux Klan and presenting black people as depraved animals or out to rape white women all over the place. This Woodrow Wilson and his government passed laws that made it illegal to oppose the war once the U.S. entered World War I, and it made it illegal to criticize the government. This is what this ruling class does when it sees its interests. There wasn't even a war on American soil. It was, remember I think this was a World War I song, wasn't it? Over there, spread the word, the Yanks are coming, et cetera, et cetera. That war was fought over there. It wasn't even fought on American soil, and yet in that context, the true dictatorship of the capitalist class became naked. Often they try to disguise it. Well, you can vote. You're the ones who are actually governing because you can choose who governs you. You can choose between exploiters. Isn't that a great thing? You can choose this group of exploiters or that group of exploiters to rule over you. But then when they saw their interests even challenged a little bit when they went into World War I at the end of the war, after letting all these other powers fight it out for several years, then they cracked down. And the raw hand of dictatorship that is, concealed at times with this outer shell of democracy came, punching through the surface. And so democracy under this system is democracy on the basis of the needs of, the interests of, and ultimately the dictates of the capitalist class. And that's why I say, when we're aiming for communism, we want to get beyond any divisions in society of oppressor and oppressed, exploiters and exploited. So then the whole relations among people are not such that you have to have some institutionalized ways to protect one part of society from another, because there are no exploiters and oppressors ruling over others. So that's a whole longer another discussion. But that's why I say, that democracy, has to be examined in its actual content. What is the content of this democracy? What is it serving? Whose interest is it actually promoting? When the people get drawn into voting for one set of exploiters or another and believing that by doing that they're exercising their power, then that serves the interests of the ruling capitalist class, because people are tailing it. They're just a tail on it, and they're doing everything politically on the terms of it, and they're deluded as to where the real power lies. So this is what's important in terms of understanding the role of democracy. This is a capitalist dictatorship. That World War I experience makes it very clear. But you see it all the time. I mean, why did they murder Fred Hampton in his bed? All this FBI that they're celebrating. I see they got a new show now with a black woman playing a new FBI agent, the secret weapon of the FBI. Upholding this fucking FBI and, an organization of mass repression and murder as some sort of positive thing that, what a, positive institution, and what a great thing that a black woman is the secret weapon of the FBI. I mean, how fucking perverse can you get? But this is, why did the FBI murder Fred Hampton? Because J. Edgar Hoover said the Black Panther Party represents the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. Fred Hampton was a prominent leader of the Black Panther Party who was attracting a lot of people, not just black people, other people as well, Latinos, white people, Native Americans. He was becoming a figure out there who was boldly saying, by the way, that movie they did about him is not the real picture of Fred Hampton, just to be clear. But he was out there saying, I am a revolutionary, and getting crowds of people to say, I am a revolutionary. Well, that's enough democracy right now. You're dead. We're going to go into your apartment in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 in the morning or whatever, and we're going to shoot you in your bed, and then shoot you again to make sure you're dead. And then say that it's your fault. Lie about what happened, that, you started this gunfight, and all these heroic FBI agents and Chicago pigs and whatever had to defend themselves, which was proven to be a lie, just like they did in Attica. The prisoners rose up in Attica heroically, uniting across lines, divisions that are very hard to overcome, just like the prisoners in Alabama are doing now. They united Puerto Rican and other Latino, black, Native American, and white prisoners. They took guards hostage, but they were very careful not to harm the guards. because they, for one reason, they knew that then that would make it much easier to go after them. So they were very careful about that. And then what happened? The great, mainstream Republican, sort of liberal Republican, Nelson Rockefeller, who was the governor, part of the Rockefeller family of exploiters, sent in the police, the state police, and they went in and they murdered not only dozens of prisoners, but the guards as well, and then tried to claim the prisoners had cut the throat of the guards, which was also disproven. This is the exercise of the actual democracy of this country, which means it's essential dictatorship over people, and whenever they rise up, or whenever, Fred Hampton, I think he first went to jail because he took some ice cream off an ice cream truck and passed it out to the kids in the neighborhood in the middle of summer, and that's how they first got him in jail, and then he was out, on jail, and that's when they murdered him. He wasn't even saying, I'm going to mobilize an army to overthrow the system tomorrow. He was just talking about revolution, and that was recognized as enough of a threat that the facade of democracy, the sham of democracy, fell to the ground, and the naked fist of dictatorship came out and murdered him, just like it did the prisoners in Attica. And you can even go back in the history of this country when people went on strike before the unions were so powerful, and they would murder dozens of people striking, and back in the end of the 19th and into the 20th century. So, this is the actual relations of power in this society. It's a dictatorship over those who are exploited and oppressed. It's the rule of the capitalist class over society. And it's very useful for them most of the time to have elections, because that's a way they can involve people in their own oppression. By making them think that by voting for, you see this, I'm pro-choice and I vote. I'm this and that and I vote. Well, you're just voting for people who are oppressing you. That's the nature of democracy under this system. And your rights will always come right up to the point where in any way they're perceived to threaten the system by the powers that be. And then you'll see the naked murderous hand of the dictatorship come out. And the dictatorship of the proletariat socialist state power is radically different from that in the ways that I've discussed.
With the ending of Title 42, tens and tens and tens of thousands of the most desperate and vulnerable people have gathered at the U.S. border. So many thousands of men, women, and children who have sacrificed so much out of unimaginable desperation for something that at best is a long shot. The right to apply for asylum has long been recognized as a cornerstone of the international and U.S. law. But this right was essentially taken away under Trump with a policy known as Title 42, which allows the U.S. government to expel all asylum seekers under the auspices of fighting the pandemic. When he was running for president, Biden assailed Trump for his attempts to deny this right to immigrants.
If I'm elected president, we're going to immediately end Trump's assault on the dignity of immigrant communities. We're going to restore our moral standing in the world and our historic role as a safe haven for refugees and asylum seekers.
But since he became president, Biden has out-Trumped Trump. Not only did Biden utilize Title 42 to expel dramatically more migrants than Trump, but now that Title 42 is expiring, Biden has initiated a policy of expedited removal.
Mothers holding young children. We're seeing a lot more kids here Tuesday, and Border Patrol agents are noticing taking them first for processing. But what exactly does that mean?
The individuals that we see that are being held between border walls in desperate situation are actually subject to expedited removal.
That means everyone here could rapidly be deported back to their home country without an immigration court hearing.
Expedited removal is a policy which is essentially an asylum ban in disguise. It keeps the right to asylum on the books while effectively eliminating it for the overwhelming majority of people.
there are women and children out here. There are a lot of people, hundreds of people beyond the fence, and they're waiting to be picked up by Border Patrol. But it's important to note that even when they are picked up, it does not mean they're automatically allowed into the U.S. to a shelter like where Chris is at, or to stay with family and friends. First, they have to make it through something called a credible fear interview. Take a listen.
I think the statistics show that there are many people who do not pass. The threshold of credible fear is so high that you have to just have so much evidence that most of the individuals here, while they do have a significant fear and a reason why they left their country of origin, that might not be enough to cut it for an asylum claim.
Now, again, as you heard Rio say, that initial interview process, the credible fear interview, is one that a lot of people will not get through. The threshold is very high. And so if that happens, if they don't make it through that initial interview, the deportation process begins. I'm told migrants have a very short window of time to fight that. Most end up being deported to Mexico or back to their home countries.
To learn more about expedited removal, you can go to the website revcom.us. But why is Biden, despite all his talk of compassion, out-trumping Trump on the border? Why? Because Biden serves a system, the capitalist imperialist system, which at this point has no answers to the massive surge of immigration now going on. Last week, we Revcoms went down to the San Ysidro border crossing to bring people the understanding that this system is the source of this and all the other outrages people are subjected to. And we went to bring people the scientifically determined truth that we do not have to live this way. Let's listen to the message brought by the Revcoms that we don't have an immigration problem, we have an imperialism problem. That this surge has been caused by the crimes of that system itself. The domination, distortion, and plundering of these economies and of these nations by the imperialist system. The devastation of the environments of the global South caused by capitalism, and the destruction of the civil societies of these countries through imperialist invasions, coups, and manipulation. Let's watch.
Ningún ser humano es ilegal.
Ningún ser humano es ilegal.
Este sistema es criminal.
Este sistema es criminal.
El mundo necesita revolución real.
El mundo necesita revolución real.
Ningún ser humano es ilegal.
Ningún ser humano es ilegal.
Este sistema es criminal.
Este sistema es criminal.
We're out here at the U.S.-Mexico border right now, the day after Title 42 has expired. And we hear a lot of people on the media who are telling us about all the floods of immigrants, people all over the world who can no longer survive in their home countries, are fleeing here to the United States. And every day on the media, what you hear is, we have an immigration problem. But we're here to tell you that we don't have an immigration problem. We have an imperialism problem. Bob Avakian, the revolutionary leader I follow, he put it like this. Now I can just hear all these reactionary fools saying, well, Bob, answer this. If this country's so terrible, why are so many people trying to get in, not get out? Why? I'll tell you why. Because you have fucked up the rest of the world even worse than what you have done in this country. You have made it impossible for many people to live in their own countries as part of gaining your riches and power. Don't believe me? Ask yourself, how did this border even get here? What happened so that this border is right here? The United States invaded Mexico and stole half the country. To do what? To expand the system of slavery. Still don't believe me? Ask yourself, how many times has the U.S. invaded Mexico? I've got the facts right here. 12 times the U.S. has invaded Mexico. Nicaragua, they invaded 7 times. Panama, they invaded 24 times. Honduras, they invaded 7 times. We don't have an immigration problem. We have an imperialism problem. Over 70 times, this country, the United States, has invaded countries all over Latin America. We don't have an immigration problem. We have an imperialism problem. What were these invasions even about? I've got a hint. Go look at the stickers on all the fruits, on all the vegetables in the supermarket. Go look at where they come from. These bananas right here are from Guatemala. This is what this country is invading Latin America for over 100 years, to enforce their exploitation, to enforce their domination, including the exploitation of little children. Hundreds of thousands of them, just in Mexico right here. Hundreds of thousands of them in Guatemala, where these bananas are from. Let's talk about Guatemala. Chiquita Banana and Dole have owned over 90% of the land in Guatemala, leaving just 10% of the land for 90% of the people. That's not enough land for people to live. That's not enough land for people to survive, to thrive. So when they stood up and they said that they were going to redistribute the land of Chiquita Banana and Dole, what did the U.S. do? They orchestrated a coup with the CIA to overthrow the government there. And they threw the country into a decades-long civil war, including putting into place a fascist dictatorship, training death squads. These are people that the U.S. military trained to find, to search for, to torture, to disappear, to execute. Hundreds of thousands of people, 200,000 people executed by death squads. And people have the gall to get up on television and ask why people come here from all over the world. These same imperialists talk about immigrants as an invading army, when these very same people fucked up their countries with actual invading armies. We don't have an immigration problem. We have an imperialism problem. And let me tell you about the first difference about the kind of society we, the Revcoms, are going to bring into being with a revolution. In this Constitution right here, this is not the U.S. Constitution, a slave owner's Constitution. This is the Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America. And in this Constitution, day one, there will be no Chiquita Banana, there will be no Dole, there will be no U.S. military bases all over the world, and there will be no CIA orchestrated coups. We will take the boot of this country off the necks of the people of the world day one after the revolution. And more than that, we're going to advance this revolution as fast as possible, as far as possible, all over the world so that we can deal with the immense problems. This is a global problem, immigration. This is a global problem, the destruction of the climate that is forcing people to flee their countries and come here. And we are going to advance the revolution all over the world so that we can have a real shot to provide a future for humanity that is worth living. And this society, about emancipation, about liberation, its orientation is to welcome people from all over the world who want to come and be part of emancipating all of humanity. That's the world we're fighting for. That's the world that's possible. Now is the time to get organized for a real revolution.
Okay, so to introduce our final short segment in today's episode, we have Andy, beamed in from Revolution Books in Harlem.
I'm very happy to be back at Revolution Books, and I can't think of a more fitting place to introduce the next segment of our show. My comrade and old friend, Clark Kissinger, C. Clark Kissinger, recently sent to the RNL Show a segment that he wrote and produced himself. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but this is a good place to introduce that, and then I'll come back with a couple words after you watch.
Belgium, a tale for our time. Belgium is a small country created in 1830 by the great powers after the Napoleonic Wars. England supplied a German prince who was also a British citizen to be the new King of the Belgians. In 1839, all major powers in Europe, including Germany, pledged that Belgium would be permanently neutral. Belgium took part in the Industrial Revolution, became a minor imperialist power with colonies in Africa, including the notorious Belgian Congo. The early 20th century saw a naval arms race between England and Germany, and in 1914 a world war broke out between the two rival groups of imperialist powers. Because France had its army stationed along the German border, Germany decided to make a surprise end run around the French by invading neutral Belgium. The Germans were in a hurry and the invasion was quite brutal. Cities were destroyed and many civilians were killed, some deliberately by firing squads. The immediate result was a great propaganda campaign by the British to justify their war effort by citing the rape of Belgium. Everyone should get behind England because of the rape of Belgium. In the end, the British and the French, with U.S. financial backing, won the war. And at the Conference of Versailles, the spoils were divided up. France got Alsace and Lorraine from Germany, as well as Togoland and Cameroon in Africa, and Syria and Lebanon. England got Namibia and Tanganyika and effective control of the Middle East. And Belgium got a tiny piece of German East Africa as a consolation prize. Propaganda issues like the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, the rape of Belgium, and the sinking of the Lusitania, which, by the way, was crammed with armaments from the U.S. headed for England, were forgotten as irrelevant to the real issues behind the war. So why is Belgium a tale for our time? Because if you substitute the United States for the United Kingdom, substitute Russia for Germany, and you substitute Ukraine for Belgium, you have today's situation. Once again, rival imperialists are gearing up for global conflict, and once again, the military moves of one side are cited as the unassailable reason why the other side should be supported without question. But just as in World War I, the people of the world have no interest in lining up with one imperial power or another. What is needed is for the people of both the U.S. and Russia to refuse to support their ruling class and to work, as communists did in World War I, to turn any imperialist war into a revolutionary war for the emancipation of all of humanity. It is a matter of basic principle and profound importance not to be echoing the positions and serving the aims of our imperialists, and instead to be making very clear our opposition to the aims and the actions of these U.S. imperialists who are using opposition to the Russian invasion of Ukraine not as a way of promoting peace or the right of nations to self-determination, but as a means of furthering U.S. imperialist interests in opposition to the rival Russian imperialists. Bob Avakian, revolutionary leader and author of The New Communism.
So that was my friend Clark producing that, and I just want to let people know that on our website there's articles by Bob Avakian on the war between, the proxy war between the U.S. and Russia. And these are very important articles to read, and you can go back into the short segments from the RNL Show and find very important exposures that we've done about the stakes of this war, the existential stakes for humanity, and we'll be covering the war as we go forward.
All right, that brings us to the end of this, our 148th episode of the RNL, the Revolution Nothing Less show. Before we close out, let me remind you one more time that next week we are on a special date and a special time. We will not be broadcasting on Thursday as normal. We will be broadcasting on Friday, May 26th, because we will have a special episode featuring the talk I'm giving next Wednesday at UCLA called Woke Lunacy versus Real Revolution. Spread the word about this episode. There are promotional materials online at revcom.us. Let others know about it. Make a big leap in spreading this show, the Revolution Nothing Less show, the lifeline for the revolution, and this campaign taking on woke lunacy through spreading this episode, and attend screenings, group screenings, wherever they're being held in your area, or host your own. It will be Friday the 26th. And with that, on behalf of the whole Revolution Nothing Less crew here in studio and beyond, I want to say goodnight, and we'll see you next week.